1. Deep inner vision. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. There comes a time when the external world loses its color, when its noise becomes dull, and its rewards begin to feel hollow. For me, that time arrived not as a moment of despair, but as a sacred invitation. A summons, if you will, to turn inward, to descend, not into madness, but into the profound mystery of the soul. Most people live only at the surface of themselves. They navigate life with borrowed values, second-hand truths, and the protective armor of the ego. But I could not remain there, not for long. From the earliest days of my life, I sensed that there was another realm pulsing just beneath the surface of things. A silent world, rich in symbol, alive with dream, myth, and meaning. It whispered to me in my sleep, showed itself in visions, and stirred me with questions no book could answer. This was the unconscious, not a garbage bin of repressed memories as some believed, but a vast living system. It was the matrix of soul, the fountain of creativity, the shadowed guide of destiny. I could not ignore it. I did not choose psychology as a profession. I was chosen by something deeper, something older. A current within my being that pulled me not toward facts, but toward meaning. You must understand, my mind did not merely think, it saw. I saw symbols not as decorations, but as revelations. I saw dreams not as idle nonsense, but as oracles from the deep. In every patient I heard not just words, but archetypes speaking. Behind the mask of every person, I sensed the ancient dramas of humanity unfolding. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man. These patterns, these archetypes are not fantasies. They are the architecture of the psyche. They are older than any religion, more persistent than any culture. They live in our stories, our relationships, our fears, and our longings. They emerge unbidden in our dreams. They haunt our symptoms. They are the bridge between the individual and the collective, between matter and spirit. To gaze inward is not to escape reality, but to deepen it. Most people fear the inner world because it does not obey reason. It is full of contradictions. One moment it shows you the angel, the next, the beast, but wholeness requires both. We cannot become who we truly are by amputating the parts of ourselves that frighten us. Integration is the path, not perfection, not purity, but depth. I have walked that path often with trembling feet. There were times I thought I might be losing my mind. My own confrontation with the unconscious during the years after my break with Freud brought me to the brink. I was not analyzing others. I was being dismantled and reconstructed by forces within myself I could barely understand. I did not write theory in those years. I recorded revelations. I painted mandalas. I spoke with the soul. I let the unconscious speak, not through intellectual constructs, but through image, symbol, and story. Those visions became the red book, not a book of psychology, but of inner initiation. It is the record of a man who dared to plunge into the abyss to meet his true self. I was terrified, but I knew, if I could face what was within me, I could help others face what was within them. The greatest burden we carry is the unlived life. The voice that whispers, "This is not who I truly am." I saw this again and again in my patients. They came with symptoms, anxiety, depression, addictions. But beneath the symptoms was always the same cry: I have lost touch with myself. Healing does not come through suppression. It comes through integration. We must meet the shadow, not with judgment, but with honesty. We must reclaim what we have disowned, the child we silenced, the rage we buried. The gifts we feared were too strange to be accepted. This is the alchemical process. Solve et coagula, dissolve and reform. Break the ego's illusions. Let the true self emerge. You may ask, but how do I know this is real? How can I trust what comes from within? My answer is this: test it, Live it, make it conscious. The unconscious does not want to rule us. It wants to be recognized. If we do not make it conscious, it will rule us from the shadows. But if we listen, if we engage, it becomes a wellspring of transformation. We live in an age that worships data but fears meaning. We measure, we quantify, we reduce, but we do not see. Science gives us knowledge, yes, but wisdom. Wisdom is born from soul, from silence, from the ability to sit with mystery without rushing to resolve it. That is why I say, turn inward, not to escape the world, but to meet it more fully. Turn inward not to retreat into narcissism, but to awaken your purpose. The world needs people who have integrated their shadow. People who are not merely reactive, but reflective. Who do not project their inner wounds onto others, but own them, transform them, and bring their hard-won wholeness into service of humanity. Do not fear the descent. The underworld is not hell. It is the womb of rebirth. When you descend into the dark, you will find the light hidden there. You will meet your daemon, your inner guide. You will discover that the very things you feared were the doors to your liberation. So I ask you now, are you willing to look, truly look, not just with your eyes but with your soul? Are you willing to follow the thread of your dreams, to see every symptom as a message, every conflict as a mirror, every relationship as a stage for your becoming? The journey inward is not linear, it spirals. You will revisit old wounds, see new facets of old truths. But this is how depth works. We become ourselves by shedding what is false and reclaiming what we abandoned. Do not seek a perfect life. Seek a true one, the life that is meant for you, not the one the world expects of you. That life speaks in whispers. It lives in the quiet spaces between distractions. It blooms in the dark soil of solitude. It calls you by name, not the name given to you by others, but the one your soul has always known. I have lived this truth. I have lost myself and found myself again, many times, and if there is one thing I can offer, it is this: the path to your wholeness is already within you. The map is in your dreams, the compass is in your symptoms, the guide is your daemon, and the time is now. Do not delay, turn inward, look and remember, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. 2. Solitude as a source of power. In each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves. In a world obsessed with noise, with endless distraction, and with the validation of others, solitude has become a forgotten art. Yet for me, solitude was not a withdrawal. It was a return to something ancient, something inner, something real. I was never afraid of being alone. In fact, I often sought it deliberately, instinctively. The world of men, their chatter, their ambitions, their cleverness, quickly exhausted me. What I longed for was not the applause of the world, but the quiet voice of the soul. And that voice only spoke in stillness. At Bollingen I built my retreat, not as an escape from life, but as a sanctuary for the deeper life. The tower I constructed stone by stone was not merely a building, it was a symbol, a mandola in architecture, a place where the ego could dissolve and something eternal could rise in its place. There, by the lake, away from the intellectual din of Zurich, I cooked my own meals, chopped my own wood, and listened. To the wind, to the water, to the silence within. Most people misunderstand solitude. They think it is emptiness. They think it is absence. But for the intuitive soul, or those attuned to the invisible, solitude is not empty. It is full of symbols, messages, voices from the unconscious. It is in solitude that dreams begin to speak with greater clarity. It is in solitude that archetypes emerge unfiltered, unguarded, untamed. To be alone is to hear what the world drowns out. Your symptoms begin to speak in symbols. Your restlessness points not to entertainment, but to the unlived life. You begin to feel the tension between who you are and who you pretend to be. And if you have the courage not to flee from it, that tension becomes power, creative power, spiritual power. There are depths in the psyche that can never be reached in the company of others. One must descend alone. The soul has its own rhythm, its own language, and it cannot be rushed. The unconscious is not a marketplace. It is a sacred forest. And if you wish to hear what lives there, you must walk in with reverence and in silence. I remember the long days in Bollingen, how the sunlight would shift across the stone walls, how the sound of my footsteps echoed in the courtyard, how the absence of the world allowed the presence of the inner world to expand. Time slowed, dreams deepened. I began to sense that I was not alone, even when no one else was there. The unconscious is never truly silent. It only needs space to speak. We live in an age that equates solitude with loneliness. But solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is communion with the soul, with the divine, with the archetypal forces that shape all human life. Loneliness is the suffering of separation. Solitude is the sanctuary of connection, inner connection. It was during these quiet retreats that I began to see more clearly the architecture of the psyche. I saw that there were forces within us, powers, personalities, presences, that lived beneath the conscious mind. I called them the archetypes, the mother, the shadow, the self, and many more. They were not theories, they were visitors. I met them not in lecture halls, but in dreams and visions, and they came most clearly when I was alone. There is a paradox here. Many come to therapy because they are afraid of being alone. Yet healing often begins with solitude, for how can you become whole if you do not know who you are apart from others? How can you listen to the voice of the self if you are constantly distracted by the voices of society? This is why I say, do not fear the silence. It is not your enemy, it is your teacher. In the silence you will meet parts of yourself you did not know existed. Some will frighten you, some will awaken awe, but all of them are you, and all of them belong. The true self is not born in noise. It is forged in solitude, in the quiet crucible of inner life, where you face your fears, your longings, your forgotten dreams. There you will find not weakness, but strength, not isolation, but depth, not confusion, but clarity, when the ego is stripped of its distractions. When it is no longer performing, no longer defending, it becomes porous. And in that vulnerability something extraordinary can happen. The self begins to emerge. The self, the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, known and unknown. This emergence is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is subtle, like the slow rising of the sun. But once it begins, your life changes. You no longer chase meaning. You embody it. You no longer seek validation. You radiate presence. You no longer run from yourself. You stand rooted in the truth of your being. I am not suggesting that we live forever in solitude. We are social creatures, and relationship is a sacred ground for growth. But unless we know how to be alone, we do not truly know how to be with others. For if we enter relationship without knowing ourselves, we do not bring love, we bring need, we do not offer presence, we demand distraction. And in doing so, we miss the miracle of human connection. Solitude is not a luxury, it is a necessity. For the soul, for the artist, for the seeker, it is in solitude that we drink from the source, that we remember who we are, that we touch the eternal. At Bollingen I carved into the stone above my door, cold or heat, good or evil, reality has no opposites. My soul is like the cosmos, immeasurable. That is what solitude revealed to me, the vastness within. So I say to you, do not fear the stillness, go into it, honor it, let it teach you, let it strip you of your illusions and reveal to you the deeper truth. And in that truth you will find strength, not the brittle strength of the ego, but the radiant power of the soul. 3. Obsession with the inner world. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. I have often been asked why I turned away from the world, why I chose to concern myself not with politics or prophets, but with dreams and symbols, fantasies and myth. It is not that I dismissed the world. It is that I saw it more clearly than most. I saw its emptiness, its compulsive striving, its glittering distractions, its endless noise. I saw how men chased after illusions, believing them to be treasures, and ignored the gold buried within their own souls. I was never obsessed with the outer world. I was preoccupied, possessed perhaps, by something deeper. I had tasted the fruits of modernity, its intellect and ambition, but I found them dry. The more I studied people, the more I realized the true forces governing human behavior do not lie in reason, but in the unconscious. We are not who we think we are. We are the sum of forgotten dreams, ancestral myths, wounded shadows, and silent instinct. To explore the psyche is not a retreat from reality. It is a confrontation with it, for what we call reality is only the surface, only the projection of what lies within. The soul casts its light and its shadow onto the world, and we mistake the reflection for truth. But the world is our mirror, and until we look into the mirror of our own depths we remain asleep, dreaming we are awake. My obsession with the inner world began early, though I did not know it by name. As a child I spoke to rocks and trees. I built altars in the forest. I felt the presence of something vast and intelligent in the silence. I experienced visions, images that had no source in my education, no explanation in logic. They were not mere fancies. They were messages from the unconscious, mythic in nature, cosmic in scope. Later, I would come to call this deep layer of the psyche the collective unconscious, a reservoir of symbols and patterns shared across humanity. When I became a physician and then a psychoanalyst, I carried this sensitivity with me. I could not see patients as cases to be fixed. They were souls, tangled in the threads of forgotten stories, haunted by dreams they could not interpret, trapped by patterns they did not understand. I found that if I could help them look inward, truly inward, something remarkable would happen. The psyche would begin to heal itself, not by logic but by symbol, not by analysis alone but by meaning. This is why I studied dreams, not to reduce them to wish fulfillment, but to see them as messages from the unconscious. Dreams are not random. They are the language of the soul. In them we find the archetypes, the eternal forms that shape all human experience. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man, they are not just characters in stories. They are living patterns within us, and they speak to us nightly if we have the ears to hear. I also turned to mythology, not to romanticize the past, but because myths are the dreams of cultures. They are the symbolic maps by which humanity has always navigated the great questions. Who am I? Why do I suffer? What is death? What is the soul? To dismiss myth as superstition is to cut oneself off from the roots of the psyche. For the mythic is not the opposite of the rational. It is its foundation, and then there is synchronicity. Many scoff at the idea that inner and outer events could be meaningfully connected without causation. But I have seen too many instances, uncanny, precise, intimate, in which an inner state is mirrored by an outer event. These are not coincidences. They are glimpses into the deeper fabric of reality, where psyche and matter are not separate, but intertwined. In those moments we see that life is not a machine, but a mystery, a dialogue, a story being told not just around us, but through us. Yes, I was obsessed with the inner world, but obsession is the word, the shallow use for passion they do not understand. I was not escaping life, I was immersing myself in it, at the level where it is truly alive. The psyche is a cosmos, a vast living totality. It is not just the mind, it is the soul, and my life's work was to chart its stars. People often speak of finding themselves, but you do not find the self by adding more to the surface. You find it by descending into the depths, by facing the monsters you have buried, by recovering the gold you have forgotten. The journey inward is perilous, yes. It is not comfortable, it is not linear, it will dismantle your illusions, it will confront you with everything you have repressed. But if you persist, if you listen, if you allow the unconscious to speak, you will awaken. And you will see that the outer world, for all its color and speed, is only the dream. The true life is within. The inner world is not a fantasy, it is the ground of being. You may wonder, how does one begin this journey? You do not need to abandon the world, but you must learn to see through it. Pay attention to your dreams, keep a record of them, study myth, read poetry, observe what moves you, what repeats in your life, what patterns return, what symbols haunt you, what synchronicities appear. Ask yourself, what part of me have I exiled? What image of myself do I fear? What story am I unconsciously living? These are not academic questions. They are the doorways to transformation. We live in an age of external obsession, fame, status, image, success. But these are shadows on the wall. They come and go. The only true wealth is self-knowledge. The only lasting power is self-integration. To look outside is to dream, but to look inside, to really look is to awaken. And when you awaken, you do not withdraw from the world. You see it as it truly is, not a prison, but a projection. Not an end, but a mirror, and then you can live not from fear, but from wholeness, not from reaction, but from truth. So I say, descend, enter the labyrinth, follow the thread of your own soul, and do not fear the darkness. For it is in the deepest night that the stars within begin to shine. For emotional depth and complexity, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Outwardly, I may have appeared calm, measured, even distant, but within me ran rivers that others could not see, tides of emotion, inner voices, subtle impressions, unspeakable yearnings. It is a peculiar fate to be deeply feeling in a world that praises logic, to possess a heart as alive as the mind, and to walk a path that no one else can fully understand. My emotional world was not easy terrain. It was vast, winding, filled with fog, sudden storms, and hidden valleys. Even those closest to me often stood at the edges, peering in, but unable to grasp what truly stirred beneath the surface. I do not fault them. Emotional depth, like the unconscious, is invisible to the eye but undeniable to the soul. From a young age I knew I was different, not superior, but different in temperament, in perception. While others played at the surface of life, I found myself drawn to what lay underneath. I did not merely feel joy, I examined its source. I did not simply experience sorrow, I listened to its message. Emotions to me were not inconveniences to be managed. They were signals, they were truths in symbolic form. I was sensitive, not fragile, but open, porous to energies, to moods, to the tensions that others could not name, but that I could feel in my bones. I could sense the pain that others hid beneath smiles. I could feel the conflict in their voices even when their words said nothing. I could intuit what had never been spoken aloud. This sensitivity, this empathic gift, allowed me to go deep with others, to accompany them into places they had never dared go alone. But this gift came with a cost. There is a solitude that comes with being attuned to the unseen. To walk among others and know that you feel more, see more, dream more than they are comfortable acknowledging, that is a kind of exile. Not imposed, but inevitable. I was never truly alone, but I often felt alone, even in marriage, even in conversation, even in admiration. My emotional complexity was a mirror of my inner work. As I mapped the psyche through dreams, fantasies, symbols, I discovered that the human heart is not a singular thing, it is a battlefield, a sacred theater where light and shadow perform their eternal dance. Within me lived contradictions, love and fear, ambition and humility, faith and despair. I did not deny them, I studied them, I lived them, I let them shape me. There were days when I felt profoundly connected to God, to the self, to some timeless order moving through all things. And there were days when I felt estranged, lost in a fog of doubt and futility. This emotional oscillation was not pathology. It was the nature of transformation. One cannot integrate the shadow without walking through its night. I have often said there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The soul does not awaken through comfort. It awakens through confrontation, through the meeting of opposites within oneself. My emotions were not obstacles to be overcome. They were guides. They revealed where I was split, where the persona masked the truth, where the child still wept beneath the adult's mask. I remember moments when a dream would leave me shaken for days, not because I feared what I saw, but because I recognized myself in it. The forgotten parts, the neglected feelings, the disowned rage, longing, grief, these were not negative emotions. They were aspects of my wholeness waiting to be claimed. Emotional complexity also deepened my work with others. I could hold their contradictions because I had made peace with my own. I could weep with them, rage with them, laugh with them, not performatively but authentically. The analyst must not be above the patient. He must be a fellow traveler, equally scarred, equally searching. Only then does true healing begin, and yet, I must confess, there were times I longed for simplicity, for a quiet life of answers, not questions, for a heart that did not feel so deeply, for a path that did not lead into the abyss, but that was not my fate. I was called to feel, to wrestle, to descend, and from those descents I brought back gold, not for myself alone, but for others. My intuition, so often misunderstood, was rooted in emotion. I did not arrive at truth through analysis alone. I felt it. I sensed its shape long before I could articulate it. A symbol would stir something ancient within me. A myth would echo something I had never read but always known. My emotions were the compass pointing me to what the intellect had not yet discovered. This is why I placed such value on dreams. They are emotional truths wrapped in symbolic language. A dream does not lie. It reveals, and its images, often irrational on the surface, speak directly to the emotional body. A lion in a dream may not be a lion. It may be repressed courage, sacred rage, untamed love. Only through feeling can one decipher such language. I have been accused of mysticism, so be it. I make no apology for speaking in the language of the soul. If science refuses the emotional dimension of the psyche, then it is not a complete science. It is an amputated one, for what are we, if not feeling beings? What is consciousness, if not the capacity to be affected, to be moved? To be human is to be complex, to feel contradictions, to long for both freedom and belonging. To desire both solitude and union. We are not machines, we are myths in motion, and emotion is the thread that weaves those myths together. If you, too, feel deeply, if you carry within you both light and shadow, joy and sorrow, know that you are not broken. You are vast, you are becoming. Your emotions are not a weakness. They are the soil from which your soul will bloom. So do not numb yourself, do not harden, feel everything, and then learn to hold what you feel with wisdom, with patience, with love. For in that holding you become whole. 5. Lifelong search for meaning, the privilege of a lifetime, is to become who you truly are. I could never be satisfied with half answers. My soul rejected them. I did not ask questions to appear intelligent, nor did I study to gain prestige. I studied because something ancient and silent inside me demanded it, something that could not rest until it had uncovered the meaning behind existence. Most people are content with surfaces. They want names for their pain, quick cures for their discomfort, titles for their beliefs. But I was never interested in appearances. I wanted to know what lies beneath. What is the true nature of suffering? Why do we dream in symbols? What hidden truths lie encoded in myth, in ritual, in sacred stories? So I searched, not just through psychology, but through alchemy, Gnosticism, mythology, the I Ching, Eastern philosophies, and Christian mysticism. To many, these were the remnants of a primitive mind, but I saw them differently. not as relics, but as reflections. Each was a mirror of the psyche, formed by different cultures, yet speaking the same symbolic language. The same archetypes reappeared across ages and civilizations, disguised but unmistakable. This was no coincidence. This was the soul speaking. I did not study alchemy to uncover literal gold. I studied it because I saw the process of inner transformation encoded in its cryptic language: nigredo, albedo, rubedo, darkness, purification, and finally integration. This was the process of individuation. The alchemist's fire was the fire of the soul, burning away illusion and bringing the hidden self to light. I also looked to dreams, not as meaningless firings of the brain, but as messages from the unconscious, symbols sent to guide, to warn, to awaken. A snake was never just a snake. A house was never just a house. They were metaphors, signposts on the journey inward. Meaning to me was not optional. It was essential. Without it, life collapses into routine, into despair. To the intuitive soul, meaning is nourishment. Without it, the heart starves. We may build great cities, accumulate wealth, and master science, but if we lose the thread of meaning, we become hollow, technologically advanced, yet spiritually adrift. And meaning is not given, it must be discovered, through symbols, through inner work, through silence. It cannot be inherited, it must be earned. In my own journey I came to realize the greatest meaning lies in becoming oneself fully. Not the self society demands, but the deeper, hidden self, the divine spark within. To become who you truly are is not a slogan. It is a sacred responsibility, and it takes a lifetime. We are born whole, but we forget. We split, we conform, and yet the self waits beneath the roles, beneath the wounds, beneath the ego. To live a meaningful life is to remember who you are, and to live from that place, no matter the cost. Carl Jung's intuitive introversion wasn't just a personality trait. It was the engine of a revolutionary inner journey, one that invites us all to turn inward and awaken.